Welcome, merry listeners, to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini.
This is where we unwrap the enchanting world of Hallmark movies and the occasional Asian dramas.
As we dive into these cinematic journeys, we're not just recapping, we're embarking on a therapeutic adventure.
Think of it as our cinematic self-care session.
And no, we're not just casual spectators. We're here to dissect the undercurrent messages, unravel the complexities, and even spot those not-so-magical moments of unhealthy behaviors.
And through it all, we'll be infusing our own unique perspectives and life experiences along the way.
Get ready to snuggle up as we explore the cheer, the charm, and the occasional cheesy wonder of these festive films. Welcome back to the Breaking Script podcast with Lala and Nini. I'm Lala, a non-French speaking French Canadian.
And I'm Nini, a first-generation ABC American-born Chinese that speaks broken kindergarten Chinglish.
And if you're new to the Breaking Script podcast, we are sister-in-laws on a mission to spread joy and glimmers while offering ways to open windows of tolerance through watching Hallmark movies and The Way Home.
We have 4 unique segments that give you a guide to review, or what we like to call break script, with the healthy and unhealthy romantic and family relationships, as well as behaviors in these movies and shows. And we always start with a movie summary or an episode recap that's like an audio spa. So even if you haven't had a chance to watch the movie or don't have access, you can still have an experience as if you did, so that you can follow along with our boba ratings. And the 4 unique segments of Breaking Script, as we call it, that magically turns your Hallmark movie or the way home watching into a more meaningful self-care session. So our segments are like, what's love got to do with it? Yeah, don't go chasing waterfalls. Ayu, oi with the poodles already. And Jayo, fighting happily ever after. I haven't said those in so long. I just had to say them today. That's what we use for our regular Hallmark movies. For The Way Home, there are different segments. But Lala, this episode had me thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do next? And that made me sad.
Oh, because how many episodes, do we know how many episodes they're going to release for The Way Home
There's
season 2?
Only 10.
And we're
This
on
is
episode 6.
And we only have
no.
3 more.
No. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. And I feel like we waited so long, but we didn't, because we watched it in the summer together, and then we kept watching it as it would come out. So what was that, July to, okay,
January.
It was kind of long. So what's that, 6-7 months? So we have to wait longer.
We have to wait an entire year.
Oh my gosh.
But it was making me think, like, okay, we did kind of say that we might be doing like Asian dramas soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I low-key kind of wanted to do like Singles Inferno or Love After Divorce. It's
Oh
not a
my
drama,
gosh.
it's a reality show.
Those are okay, I'm a fan girl of Singles Inferno, and I also like fell in love with Love After Divorce, but I love Korean game shows.
Do you really?
Well, because
okay,
specifically Love Inferno, or Singles Inferno, everyone I think in life assumes that I have the personality type that loves to watch The Bachelor, but I hate The Bachelor.
So interesting.
So I don't like any, even I recently have gotten into Love is Blind, but that is the only Americanized love reality show that I will watch.
Whoa.
I think it's so cringe. But it was actually your brother that introduced me to Singles Inferno, and he's like, I think you would really like this because it's very respectful. It's not cringy. It's very
it's true.
The drama isn't too drama. The high isn't too high. It's like a Hallmark movie. The high isn't too high. The low isn't too low.
It's so true. I have to say, though, because I watched the first season of Singles Inferno, again, thanks to my brother. And I legit hated reality shows probably the same level that I hated Hallmark movies previously. Like, they were almost equal in my mind. Like, they're cringy, obviously not the same. But he got me watching reality shows. It started with, oh my gosh, what's the real estate one? with the Oppenheimer
Oh,
group.
you like Selling Sunset?
Okay, Selling Sunset is what got me going, and then I realized, oh my
Interesting.
gosh, I enjoy psychoanalyzing the
Mm,
characters, but I
yes.
don't think I could do a pod on them because
No.
these are real people with real lives, and they already have enough trauma that they have to go to therapy for.
Right?
I have therapist friends in LA that, like, you know, they get people from dating reality shows. Like, it's a real thing because like, you have enough trauma from relationships in general or grief
Yeah.
or whatever, not just trauma, that you need to go process. And being in those reality shows like intensifies things to like another level, especially
Definitely.
like having to process like it's entertainment. So like producers and like, you know, will make certain decisions and anyways,
Yes.
I watched the first season of Singles Inferno and the first 2 seasons of Love is Blind and loved it because I love the psychoanalyzing. Like, I was just so curious about the experiment, but I'm not gonna lie. There was so much buzz on social media with the last season of Love is Blind. I just had to binge it. Like,
oh, I was into Love is Blind the first season. Second season did not catch me. Third season did not watch.
same.
Fourth season, we scrubbed through the whole thing. So we ended up watching like the first episode and jumping right to the reunion.
That's how
And
I
then
do it. Yeah.
5, we were in it, and 6, we're really in it. But jumping back, I also love Japanese reality shows like Terrace House. One of my all-time favorite.
Terrace House.
Terrace House,
Okay.
and then Love After Divorce, which was I've never seen anything like that.
I've never seen anything like that. And the reason why I loved it was because this last season, which was the first season that was global, I think, international, so that we got it in our American Netflix, because they did like, you know, the American and Canadian Koreans also. And like, I was like, oh, I'm not Korean, but I felt seen because I was like, okay, this is more like, oh, it's my people. Like, this is how we like when you basically feel like a third culture kid because you don't belong in either place. You don't speak Korean enough or you don't speak Chinese enough. Anyways, we could go on and on. See, maybe we could do a pod, but anyways, it makes me nervous. I had to listen to the second season. The only reason why I got into it because I was like, oh my gosh, there's more API representation. So I followed Natalie Lee and Deep D from season 2 of Love is Blind. And so I had to listen to the podcast. I can't believe I'm this girl. I'm like, who am I?
Wow.
I never would have done this before in my life. So anyway, if you're not into reality shows and I'm already sad about the Way Home ending, like extra sad. We'll talk about why. Somebody feed Phil. There's
I know the new
season. And he went to Taipei and he took Monica with him, Phil and Monica Rosenthal. If you haven't listened to our trailer intro episode, it's 10 minutes. It's my love letter to the Rosenthal family. I love Somebody Feed Phil. If you're going through grief, loss, trauma, PSA, don't watch Pixar, don't watch documentaries. Somebody Feed Phil. I love it. It brings me, I was like, oh, I forgot. It brings me so much joy. So much joy. And if you need more Hallmark, When Calls the Heart picks up when The Way Home ends. So, you know. And Team Nathan, what is Hallmark doing with all these love triangles? And
they're like competing with Love is Blind. And
they're calling it like love squares and love rhombuses, love parallelograms. It's like crazy. Anyways, we're excited for that because our household is Team Nathan. And they're teasing all kinds of things. So anyhow, let's get into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
This is the part of the episode where you just get to relax. It's an audio spa, or hopefully if you're doing a chore or work or working out, it makes the time pass faster. This is season 2, episode 6, where the Landry women reach an emotional climax as Kat works to conjure up a rescue while Alice sees Dell through a wave of grief as old wounds are open. This episode's called How to Save a Life. In 1814, Kat, Susanna, and Elijah are in shambles on the beach, reeling from Jacob being dragged away by soldiers upon his return to Port Haven. Susanna blames Thomas Coyle and believes that Jacob was likely taken to jail by the king's soldiers. Elijah tells them to go after them, and on their way, Susanna asks Thomas to tell the truth to her and Kat. Thomas reveals that he had Jacob skim rum off the top of his already illegal rum shipment he was in on with Cyrus to the British in return for Jacob's safe passage home. Kat says that she'll never forgive Thomas, and Susanna claims she knew about Thomas's business dealings, but not Jacob's involvement. At the prison, the guard says that no Jacob or police have been there, and Susanna believes they've taken Jacob directly to the Crown to hand him over. Susanna says that Kat needs to go home as she can find answers for them in the present. Kat then remembers the execution records that Casey Goodwin found at the Herald and runs back to the pond. In the present-day Landry house, Alice joins Dell in the kitchen, and they talk about their nights. Dell gets a phone call from the police, and they tell her they found something up the coast that they believe might be Jacob. Dell tells Alice they used to get calls like this all the time, but none were useful, and they just have to wait and see. You can see the torment in Dell's face. Dell offers to take Alice to school, but she says Elliot offered to take her. So Alice goes over to Elliot's and tells him about the phone call Dell just received. In the kitchen, Dell has a flashback to sitting morosely at the table with Colton and young Kat. The phone rings in 1990s, and Colton gets up to get it as he believes it might be a lead on Jacob. He tells him that a Landry never gives up hope as he answers the phone. In present day, at Elliot's house, Alice asks him if they should tell Dell that it can't be Jacob that the police found. Elliot tells Alice that there's no truth yet and wonders if Dell would even believe them. He says they can't tell her as they can't get her hopes up that Kat is going to bring back Jacob either. Alice gets a text from Kat. She's back in the present and at the Herald. Elliot and Alice rush and head over to meet her there. At the Herald, Kat finds the town execution records. She flips through the book frantically and seems relieved. Elliot and Alice arrive at the Herald and ask Kat if she found Jacob. She tells them how he was arrested by soldiers on his arrival. Then Kat gets a phone call from the Herald's printer, and she knows the deadline on the Founders Day edition is tonight. She has to complete the layout by that evening to get it out on time. Elliot and Alice say they will handle the paper so that Kat can go back to 1814 for Jacob. At the Landry house, Dell works on her pottery as Kat enters. Kat says she has to pull an all-nighter to get the Founders Day edition out. And Dell wonders how she can write in paper on an event she was barely there for. Obviously, she noticed. Kat goes upstairs to Jacob's room, and she sees the Polaroid pictures that young Jacob took out of the pond on his dresser. She looks at one in particular that he took of a key on the ground with a G on it that's next to his red shoes. Kat has flashbacks to Cyrus Goodwin grabbing her arm in 1814, and the same G is on his ring. She thinks back to Casey Goodwin holding the Founders Day ribbon pin that had the same G on it, and recalls adult Jacob being dragged away at the beach and that same G symbol on the boot of a soldier that arrested him. She realizes that this G symbol is the Goodwin family emblem, and that it was actually Cyrus Goodwin's men who took Jacob, not the Crown soldiers. Kat digs in boxes at the Landry house and finds the key with the G on it that young Jacob found when he was a child. She finds it rather quickly, mind you. In Alice's room at the Landry house, Kat tells Alice about the key and all the places she saw the Goodwin G. She believes Cyrus had his men dress as British soldiers and take Jacob because it must have been Cyrus's ship that Thomas had Jacob steal from. Kat says she's so close, but Alice tells her she can't go back now because of the police phone call to Dell. Dell needs their support. But Kat says she has to go as it already might be too late and asks Alice to look after her grandma while she's gone. Downstairs, Kat sees Dell reorganizing the kitchen, trying to keep busy. Kat brings up the phone call Dell received and remembers the fruitless phone calls they used to get in the past. Kat tells Dell she has to get back to work on the paper, but she hugs Dell and tells her it's going to be okay and heads back to the pond. Back in 1814, Kat arrives to the Landry house. Susanna asks if she's found anything, and Kat tells her she believes she knows who took Jacob. Just as she's about to say it, Thomas arrives and says that it was Goodwin's men who took Jacob. Kat accuses Thomas of knowing the soldiers' plan and letting Jacob take the fall for his actions. She realizes she told Thomas when Jacob was coming home, and accuses Thomas of alerting Cyrus to Jacob's arrival. Thomas assures them he does not get on with the soldiers, and that he believes Jacob is alive and imprisoned somewhere in Cyrus's house. Thomas knows that Jacob will be under lock and key, a key that Kat just so happens to have. In present day, in the Landry kitchen, Alice tells Dell she has to get back to work on a science project. and that she's only a phone call away if Dell needs her. Dell has a flashback to the past again, when she received a phone call about Jacob in the laundry kitchen with Colton present. The person on the other end claims to be a psychic, saying that they saw Jacob drowning in water and calling for Dell. Dell begs them to stop speaking frantically, as Colton takes the phone away from Dell and tells them to never call again. Back in present day, after her memories of the past, Dell heads outside and runs into Sam having some trouble picking up his horse, Stormy, and getting him back into his trailer, but he refuses. Dell helps the stubborn horse, but hears the phone ring from inside and runs to get it. The call is spam, and Dell is angry and tells them not to call again. Sam enters the laundry house and asks Dell what's going on. Dell tells him that the phone calls are about something that happened to her family a long time ago. He says he knows about it and that he'll be there for her whenever she needs him. Sam recognizes that Dell and his horse have a special bond, and he asks if she'd like to keep him and he'll continue to pay. Dell agrees because she would miss the horse. And she also asks if Sam would like to stay for a glass of wine. And y'all, it is the longest glass of wine we've ever seen. Back in 1814, though, Thomas tells Susanna and Kat that he'll need time at the Goodwin estate to find Jacob. He asks Susanna if she has drugs that will work on Cyrus's men, and she says she only has some Jimson weed. It can knock a person out, but it doesn't kill, and it's unreliable. Kat doesn't trust Thomas and wants to do it without him, but he claims they need him as he knows Cyrus's men. Susanna says she'll distract and occupy Cyrus during the mission, as she was once Cyrus's betrothed. You heard that right. Susanna and Cyrus were betrothed. They wonder if Cyrus being scorned and rejected is part of the reason Jacob was captured. They realize that all three of them need to be involved in order to make this rescue work. Thomas is to drug Cyrus's men with a Jimson weed infused rum and keep watch. Susanna is to distract and occupy Cyrus, and Kat is to be the one to find Jacob on the Goodwin grounds using the key she has. Thomas says that if Cyrus's men find a stranger, they will kill on sight, so Kat decides to dress like Susanna. In present day, at the Herald, Elliot and Alice struggle with the paper's layout program as they work to get the Founders Day edition out for Kat. Alice finds an old paper from 2007 about Jacob and flips through it to an article that's about teens trashing the Goodwin's Lingermore estate. Elliot says it happened the fall after he graduated college. Kids apparently wrecked the estate in a party gone wrong. He says he only worked for Evelyn in the summer, though, and doesn't know much about it, and quickly, suspiciously changes the subject back to the paper they're working on. They have a deadline. Alice puts the paper she found about Lingermore in her backpack. At the laundry house, Dell says goodnight to Sam after their glass of wine. He thanks her again for keeping his horse Stormy and wishes her all the best. In the kitchen alone, Dell recalls sitting at that table with young Kat when the phone rang. Kat picks it up and asks the caller not to call again and tells Dell that at least they're receiving less calls like that. Dell comes back into the present as Alice enters the kitchen. Alice tells Dell that things will get better and asks Dell why she doesn't get rid of the phone. Dell tells Alice that she thought Jacob's memorial would bring closure, but she will always have questions and there will always be calls. She says that they kept the landline phone as it's the only number Jacob knew and they thought he might want to call them sometime. In 1814, Thomas arrives at Cyrus Goodwin's estate with a basket of rum. Cyrus's men tell him that he wants Thomas's head on a pike, but Thomas assures them that he's there to make amends. He shares rum from his own private stock that, unbeknownst to them, is tainted with Jimson weed. Susanna arrives to the Goodwins to see Cyrus, and his guard brings her to him with a cup of rum. Kat arrives to the estate, disguised as Susanna, and Thomas lets her in the back and sends her downstairs where he believes Jacob is. With no explanation. It was confusing for me too. In Cyrus's room, Susanna says she is there to share supper to share with him, and his guard hands him the rum. Actually, Cyrus takes the rum from his guard. Downstairs, Kat navigates the tunnels in the Goodwin estate with a lantern, looking for Jacob. A guard finds Kat and knows that she isn't Susanna, and just then, Susanna hits him over the head, knocking him out, saving Kat's life. Kat and Susanna then look for Jacob together, as Susanna knows the tunnels well because, get this, her father and Thomas used to use these tunnels for smuggling. In the main room at Cyrus's Goodwin's estate, Thomas sees all of the men passed out from the rum. Upstairs, Cyrus awakes from his Jimson weed rum stupor and stumbles to the tunnels looking for Susanna. Kat and Susanna trick Cyrus as he's still coming out of his hallucinations from the Jimson wheat, and they pretend to be two of the same person dressed the same, and he believes he's seeing double. He accuses Susanna of being a witch, and they successfully get away from him to keep looking for Jacob. Susanna goes to find Thomas as Kat finds a locked door in the tunnels. She uses the G emblem key she found to open it, and it works. Kat enters to find Jacob, badly whipped and beaten and seemingly unconscious inside. In present day, in the Landry house, Dell gets another phone call. She runs downstairs to answer, and Alice follows soon after. Dell tells Alice that the caller told her that what they found was not Jacob. Dell says she shouldn't have gotten her hopes up, but she just wants answers. She's been tormented by these calls and feels awful for the way she reacted to them in the past, to young Kat in particular. She asks Alice to hold her and not to leave. What a tender moment. Back in 1814, Kat tends to Jacob as Susanna finds Thomas. Thomas relays that Cyrus's men are conscious and they need to get Jacob out of there. Kat says that the only way is for her to be the decoy because Cyrus needs to see that it was her to protect Susanna and Thomas. Kat relays that she has a safe place to go, so Thomas goes back to Cyrus's men and Cyrus tells him to find Susanna. Cyrus then runs outside to see Kat at the front of the estate and calls her a witch for stealing Susanna's face. He sends his men after her, the woman in white, he calls her, and they chase Kat to the pond's edge. Kat unknowingly drops the Goodwin key while she runs through the woods, which is a really familiar scene if you were in season 1. She says, "I'll be back for you, Jacob, I promise," before jumping into the pond and disappearing. Thomas and the other men stare, perplexed at the pond that Kat disappeared into. And what they don't mention is that as they're running through the wood, Thomas Coyle actually pushes one of the gunmen over, saving Kat's life before she jumps in the pond. But back in the 1990s, a young Jacob comes across the dropped Goodwin G emblem key on the ground in the woods near the Landry house at exactly the same point that Kat dropped it in the 1800s. He points his Polaroid camera down and takes a picture of the key next to his red shoes. And that is the end of the recap of episode 6 of season 2 of The Way Home.
And now is a part of our episode where we give this episode of The Way Home, episode 6, a rating out of 10 bobas, just an overall rating. So Nini, what did you give this episode?
Sigh. I gave it a 5. 5
Wow.
represents flatlining. I
Really?
even lowered my standards and I feel like I have to go back and like change my ratings on the other ones. I feel like I'm seeing taking this from Love is Blind. I was rating it for its potential. It's not fully potentied.
Are you feeling like the second season lull is starting to happen? You know, where
yeah. Go ahead. So what were you gonna say?
Well, you know when a show is wildly successful in season 1 and they put so much effort into crafting the story, and then all of a sudden they're signed to do season 2, and then it's kind of feels more like building the ship at sea and less as, I don't know, strategic or well thought out. Are you feeling it like that?
I think I possibly am. I think I'm like, why I gotta go back and check myself. Like, was it so good last season because my standards were so low that I was like, oh, this is a Hallmark show. And why am I even watching it? And it blew me out of the water. I feel like there's not as many unexpected twists that are surprising me that I'm like, oh, that is so clever. I love this show. Like the writing doesn't have as much substance. Like the storyline doesn't have as much substance. And so I'm disappointed. However, supposedly it ranks as like the number 1 most watched program overall on entertainment cable. The 5 consecutive episodes, the first 5 ranked among the top 2 most watched entertainment cable programs of each week. So like it's still ranking. It says it's reached 4.4 million unduplicated total viewers.
Interesting.
I don't know. Anyways, what did you rate it?
I actually gave it a 7.5, which I can't remember what my score was last week, but I felt like it was a little bit better than last week. And Nini and I talked over text. So
yeah,
I knew she had watched it first before I did. So I don't know if I went in then with really low expectations and then I ended up liking it. But I will say, I think
Yeah.
there was a couple of things that I didn't understand,
Same.
and we can talk about that I just didn't
Yeah.
feel like was super clear. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it was a 7.5 for me. I actually did like it. I felt like last week not a lot happened, and I did feel
Right.
like more things happened this week. So,
Yeah, I think my expectations were too high because I was like, oh, it
mm,
follows the cadence of the first season. Episode 6 is going to be epic because it was for season 1, where you get a lot of answers. And you did hear, but it wasn't done as cleverly as I would have liked. And so
interesting.
guys, you made me eat my words again. Because I was like, oh, for the way home, we're not going to have much for dead ends. And I feel like my dead
Oh,
ends was a bigger category. That's for the regular Hallmark reviews, usually what we call aigu oi with the poodles already, where we have like plot holes, continuity issues, and what we didn't like. And I was like, oh my gosh, basically, most of my content today was surprising detours and dead ends instead of home sweet home, glimmers,
mm-hmm.
and surprising detours. So, anyway, shall we just dive into it?
Let's do it.
Our first segment, Home Sweet Home, we talk about what we love, glimmers, and breaking down the romantic and family relationships. And usually, where we introduce new characters or like new developments of new characters, there wasn't a whole lot here, even though we saw more of other characters. I think that was
Yes,
what was disappointing for me. Like, we saw more of Jacob. The dude still hasn't had a line.
true.
There's more of Cyrus Goodwin. Okay. The rest of that's going to be in Surprising Detours. But I just feel like there just wasn't. I wanted material. I wanted content for me to talk about here, and I didn't like. I had a tiny, tiny glimmer.
What was it?
The only glimmer I had was, okay, thank goodness. At least there's something of like, the clever full circle moments that I love so much, where they did bring full circle and more details on the White Witch scene of Kat jumping into the pond and why she has long hair and why she's
Right.
dressed like that. I like
Yes.
that she did that because it's the same as the finale of season 1, episode 10, how that ended. It's the same. And in that same moment, they're adding more to that ending scene of Kat dropping the key. And so that's how you see 8-year-old Jacob, but you also see 8-year-old
Yes.
Jacob taking a picture of it at the same time, picking it up. So I was like, okay, it's like, but not. I feel like there used to be so many more of those. And did I make that up? Like, I have to go back and look now. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I didn't feel like
Yes,
there was as many of those.
I agree.
Okay.
I do still equate some of, I like think that some of these episodes are going to be those filler episodes, and I feel like it's not going to be as impactful and filled with the twists and turns because again, going back to like a music album, these are like filler songs.
But we only have 3 episodes left. You're
I
following like
know.
a Taiwanese drama where it's like, oh my gosh, we've had 40 episodes of nothing, and now you have like
Hmm.
2 episodes to wrap everything up, and they start like 10 different storylines in the last 2
I feel like
episodes.
that's
And
what's going to happen.
oh, Lord have mercy. Okay.
I
Well,
I
what
did
else do you
not
have
really
here?
have any. I had two glimmers and then I have a question for you. So I'll just start with the
Oh,
glimmers.
okay.
Um, because I didn't really know where this question falls, but I love Dell's voice. I don't know why
Yeah.
Andy McDowell's voice is so calming to me.
Yes,
Like, has
soothing.
she ever
Totally.
done a headspace or anything like that? Because I would
She totally should.
it is so like when she was talking to the horse, even when she was talking to Alice, and even though she was like sad or scared about Jacob's remains, like I there was something very calming about her voice. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I just it really stuck out to me. I
Hmm.
also wrote that I loved the full circle moment, but I think I might have an issue with it, which we can talk
Same.
about in Dead Ends.
Yep.
But I loved because I forgot about that. And so when she was running and the hair and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's the scene, like it's the very first scene that we see ever in season 1, right? Episode 1.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, which does make it feel like a well thought out show because they would have had that in mind a
Yeah,
long time.
well, I feel like the writers, and I can't remember if it was Marley Reed as the one. There are two main writers,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's a lot more than two writers on this show, but I think it was Marley Reed that, and I'll put it in the show notes if I'm wrong, that this was a story that she wrote like in college.
Oh my gosh.
So this was her story that she wrote. Obviously, there's many iterations of it
Sure.
later, and there's a lot of collaboration in terms of like the actors, being able to, and other writers being able to, it's like evolving as it goes. Like it's this really creative blend of like, this is a story she already had.
Mm,
But I feel like it's what I needed more. I needed you to explain all the other storylines that you've started. Like, we've already done this one. Like, I have enough on this
yeah.
one. We're in episode 6. Like,
Yes, it was a
I need
little
more.
long in the tooth what was happening. Okay, but I
Mhm.
want to jump to my question really fast because this is
Okay.
developing and I'm not sure how I feel about it. So my question for
Okay.
you is, do we love or do we hate this banter friendship between Alice and Elliot? Like he feels
Right?
very kind of passive aggressive towards her and she's like very
Yes.
helpful and he just like seems like annoyed with her and yet they have a lot of scenes together where they're working together and I'm like, do we love this or do we not love this? I can't tell.
I can't tell if it's just that Evan is such a brilliant actor that he's like psychologically getting into this guy, this character, Elliot, who had a relationship with Alice, as a teen. And so he flip flops between like super immature, like an immature adult talking
Mm.
to a teenager, and then also being a fatherly figure. And I cannot imagine how, I almost cussed, confusing that would be for a teenager. Like, that is low
Yeah.
key, like super unhealthy, toxic, could be destructive behavior.
Mm.
Like, my only glimmer was like, we have Alice again, like being the most mature one,
True.
almost pretty consistently ever since
Yeah.
episode 2 of
Yes.
season 1.
Yeah.
She's been incredibly mature, and Elliot is like his flip-flopping between this, like he talks at her like he's still a 16-year-old in an adult body.
Yeah,
But
I
maybe
know.
it's because it's his muscle memory, like him. I don't know if it's just his brilliant acting, if he's like he put that into that character, or if that
Mm.
character was written that way. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like what's
Yes.
coming next?
Yeah.
Um, anyways, what'd you think?
I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. I don't know. I can't tell if I like this friendship developing or not. And he seems kind of condescending to her, so I guess not. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And the thing that's well, this isn't a home sweet home, but the thing that's creepy is that you never see that with Kat. So it
No.
creeps me out because he's only that way with Alice, and it's just weird to me. Um, yeah, I don't really, besides like I love that Delle's back at her pottery. She's super calming. Weirdly enough, I feel like the Thomas Coyle character in real life could also have a very, there's just certain people that have this voice, like, oh my gosh,
Yes, he
my
does have a soothing
instructor.
voice.
Yeah, right? My
Yeah.
instructor for brain spotting, he has that like voice where it's like it takes you to a different level.
Mm,
It's they just have those voices. It helps. It does something for us.
yeah. I have two things for healthy, well, just the relationships that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I did love that although we're not, fans of how Elliot is treating Alice, that Elliot steps up and helps Kat with the Herald. I
Yeah.
did appreciate that and I thought that went a long way. And then my favorite was when Dell asks Alice to hold her and says not to leave
Same.
her. Like it was just a precious moment of like a great, I don't know,
Yeah.
like the pain that she was feeling. And Dell so rarely opens up and like needs anything
Totally.
from someone. And
Yes.
we're seeing this softer side, which we've talked about all season. I loved that.
Yeah, her showing her vulnerability, that's so key in
Yeah.
relationships. And I mean, I put that too, but also Dell and Kat even embracing over
Yes.
recalling the useless tormenting
Yes.
Jacob calls, like, and reminiscing on that. It almost felt like, wow, was that the first time that they were even able to talk about it in that way, in
Yeah.
reflecting like that? I felt like that was key. So, I mean, that's all that was
Same.
it.
That's it.
Let's move on. Surprising Detours is where we talk about surprises, usually in the way home. There's so many of them because for the Hallmark movies, this is where we talk about unhealthy behaviors and coping mechanisms. Um, I mean, let's talk about the surprises first. Shall we rapid fire some?
Well, can I start with a big one and ask you a question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I wrote OMG, the key, which is a big surprise that a lot of this episode is based around, that Kat finds this key and in Jacob's stash, and it's like linked to the Goodwin house. Anyways, do you feel like this key was a two on the nose, or do you think it was like a great surprise? I cannot figure out how I feel about this
Okay,
key.
this is how I feel about the entire episode. That exactly. And I almost texted you that. It was like almost everything that was like an unexpected twist was almost too on the nose and felt
Mm-hmm.
like cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't feel like it had as much substance. But because previous episodes in the previous season was so clever, it's like, well, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're going to
Right.
do something with it that gives that extra dimension. But I didn't. I have more about that in Dead Ends.
Okay.
Like I didn't, again, made me eat my words. I didn't like the cold open. But that's when we find out that Jacob was smuggling rum from the already smuggling venture for
Yes.
Cyrus Goodwin to sell for Thomas, and that's why Thomas gave him, bought that for him on bought his route. What am I trying to say? His return home on the Belladonna. And that Jacob wasn't taken by British soldiers. It was Goodwin's men dressed up as soldiers. Again, so that, see, surprising detours and dead ends are going to overlap in this episode because the way that Kat stumbled upon it, we'll cover more about it in dead ends, again, felt really on the nose. And I was already feeling that way. And just as she's about to tell Susanna, Thomas walks in and says it out loud, like it was
Yeah.
Goodwin's men. And I was like, this is no, I don't like it. I don't like how
Mm,
you were presenting the information. I don't know if it's because you're running out of time in episodes, so you just gotta like pump out all this information.
that's probably it.
I don't like how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the cold open, and then immediately after that is Dell telling Alice at the beginning of an episode that she had a nice night of Founders Day. Ew, cringy. Um, and right away she gets a call about Jacob. So again, you're fitting a lot in a short period of time, but the way they're
Mhm.
going about it, I don't know what I'm feeling. Tell me, people, what am I feeling about this? I'm going to put it in the show notes. Answer the question, please.
Yeah, and I think it feels a little sloppy, and we've seen such a again
Yes.
so much intention into every detail, like in season one, that
Mhm.
it's a. I think you're right. It's a little too sped up. It doesn't feel as well thought out. Um, Also, what did you think? Okay, another surprise is that Susanna and Jacob, it's a relationship out of convenience. Although she did say that
What?
there was love there, right? Did she say that she loved him?
Yeah,
But it was
she
a
did. So it's
relationship.
like, so then what? What?
Yeah, so
We're
it's a
gonna move on.
relationship of convenience. And then she was also I thought it was cheesy that she was also betrothed to Cyrus.
Right. And when the way that they presented that information, it wasn't clear. Like I had to think about like what was the convenience. The convenience was that Jacob was protecting Susanna from Cyrus.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not from the
Right? Like
1800s,
there
so I
wasn't
don't.
enough like you better give me
Yeah.
more there because I can't,
What is he protecting her from?
well, because Cyrus is such a villain, but how is being married to Jacob
Protecting.
right? Like maybe it stops him from pursuing her. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. There was a lot of that. Like, okay, but I don't get it. There's a lot of wait what's, which is what dead ends is.
Yeah. We also see Jacob again for the first time, but he is unconscious.
Yeah.
So of course, Kat cannot speak with him. So we have yet to hear him speak. We have yet for him to acknowledge her, to recognize her, and then I think one of the surprising detour, which I don't necessarily. Well, I guess this is a surprise. It's a really like sad, I think, reality that probably a lot of parents face that lose a child. But when Dell talks about why she's kept the landline, because there was actually this moment where the phone was ringing and, Dell is outside talking to Sam and they're trying to put the horse in the trailer, and she runs inside to the landline. And I had this thought of like, why do they have a landline still? And then when she said, we keep the landline because it's the only number he knows in case he wants to call us. And that was just like, that was one of those way home moments where it like really like gets you in the heart. And it's a very real thing that I think a lot of people face. That was heartbreaking.
Totally. Like, because he could call at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that we'll talk more about this in the way we see it, but another surprise was they gave more details because there were so many calls coming in, but the one that they gave more details about was a call from a psychic about Jacob in the water, and he was calling out his mom's name. That was a surprise. We already knew because of previews that Susanna, Thomas and Kat were going to rescue Jacob together, but obviously we've already discussed this. Like, Kat dresses up as the White Witch to do so. And so you get more of that, but again, okay, this is overlapping to dead end, so we'll cover that there. But I guess in the process of doing that, I think a big surprise is we find out that there's tunnels under the Lingermore estate, and Susanna's father, so not Jake, not Elijah Landry, Susanna's father and Augustine and Thomas use the tunnels for smuggling. So it seems like, does it feel like to you that Susanna and Thomas had a relationship before Susanna and Jacob did? Not like a romantic relationship, but they seem really familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
right?
history there. I bet that Thomas Coyle has been around forever as well.
Like, where are you from? Are you from a founding family? Like, who the heck are you? We're in episode 6. I need more people. And then the last surprise that I have is that article that Alice steals. Well, let's talk about this, where Elliot, I know you put it in your glimmers and your home sweet home, but for me it's in Surprising Detours. It's a little triggering for me, where Elliot tells Kat, like, no, he flips again from the last episode where he's like, you got to stop with the past. And he's like, no, you got to go save Jacob, which I get. Like, if you've had a relationship like that, very normal to be tormented and flip flop. But could also be like incredibly unhealthy. He could still 100% be a villain.
Right.
And have his own underlying reasons for why he keeps flip-flopping. Right. But why this is low-key dead ends, but why would you offer to put together a newspaper but not know how to? You're asking a teenager to get you a manual of instructions.
Well, again, I don't love how he's treating her.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this whole scene and their interactions, like,
yeah,
it could have been a selfless, like, serving thing. It could have been a good thing, but it doesn't seem like it because the way it's playing out is incredibly unhealthy in their interactions and how he's going about it. And then she's asking him about the article in the paper that she finds, which, where would you have a headline that says "Shame on the Youth of Port Haven"? That feels like it's more like a quote, like not a headline of an article. Like, it just felt really out of place. Again, sorry, you guys. It's going to overlap with dead ends today because I have too many in dead ends. But when she asks Elliot about it, obviously this is the thing we're all waiting for. I really was hoping we would have more. I thought we would have more in episode 5 about the party gone wrong. And we find out finally that it's actually in 2007. So it's after Elliot and Kat, after they all graduate from college.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, like, is Alice still visiting, going to still be 16 or like 17? Will she age? Like,
Oh, interesting. Never thought about
right?
that.
Because it's going to be in 2007. So anyway, I don't really have anything else there besides the fact that we have a little bit more about this break, why the reasons why there's unhealthy dynamics between a parent and child can often be traced back to like an event where there's a misunderstanding, right? And so
Right.
we finally hear more about like what actually happened between Dell and Kat. Like up until this point, you think like, oh, Kat just left for college and like never came back. And
Yeah.
you kind of would be okay with that, yeah?
Yeah.
Like that makes sense, but apparently there's more where something happened between Dell and Kat specifically regarding these calls that they've been getting about evidence regarding Jacob. And apparently, is this what you picked up? Like Dell said some mean things to Kat that she didn't mean.
Yeah. Well, there definitely has to be a reason for such distance in their relationship aside from just losing Jacob.
And Colton and all the
Yeah.
like, and not coming back for 20 years.
Because you would think that something like that would bring you closer together. Like when you lose your family, like when a family goes from 4 to 2, right?
Oh,
You would,
girlfriend. That's what you would think.
well, I just mean between Dell and her mother, like or sorry, Kat and her mom, like, but
Yeah.
instead, like, that's what I mean. Like something else has happened.
Well, it's funny. We'll catch up about it personally this weekend. It was actually something I was thinking about this weekend. Lala never got to meet her mother-in-law, my mother. And
Actually, I did meet her one time.
oh, sorry, yes.
Yes.
But like it hardly counts. But
Yeah.
yes, I'm glad you at least got to meet her
One
once.
time. Yeah, me too.
But you didn't really get to know her. It's just sad.
No.
And what makes it really sad is so within an 18-month period of time for my family and for my children, we had a death in like all sides of our family. So like for my side and for their dad, it was both their dad's like maternal and paternal sides, and it was all pillars of the family. And we're the type of family, like we had so much extended family that were really close, that did gatherings consistently all the time, that when those it wasn't just the grief of the death of those pillars of the family that passed, it was how
Yeah.
it changed the dynamics of how the rest of the family interacts. And I can't
Right.
say that there's a certain event or things that people would point to. It's just it all fell apart. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it was something that I was like grieving even this weekend, like, oh my gosh, Lala will never get to see like our big family
Right.
happy gatherings. Ironically, I can't even remember which Hallmark. We had a lot of sickness in our house this weekend, so I watched a lot of different things. I was watching a Hallmark movie in the background. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a Hallmark movie. I think they made a reference to this in a Hallmark movie, but it was Love is Blind.
Oh.
It was I can't even remember. It wasn't one of the main cast, I don't think. Or maybe it was, but I didn't like him. Maybe it was that Jeremy guy.
Okay.
Where they were talking about how like it was in the pods, and they were discussing like what their Christmases were like what their families were like for Christmas. And they were discussing
Right.
about how like when you have more of a broken family or a smaller family, like you don't have that Hallmark, where everyone looks at the Hallmark family Christmas is like, oh, I would love to experience that sometime. Like, but talking about how they had that when they were a kid and they want to recreate that when they get married. But this guy's grandmother told him like, yeah, if you want that, you have to be the one to recreate
Yeah.
it. And anyway, it was just it made me sad. All that just to say, it could like death can, without extra events, it can just affect relationships
Yeah,
that
you're
much because
right.
I've lived it in 3
Yeah.
different families.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad. But anyways, let's move on because dead ends, what we didn't like, the wait what's, plot holes, continuity issues. I have so many questions. First of all, I didn't like that school started already. Like again, so much time is passing. Like Alice is back in school.
Yes.
It's passing way too fast, and I
Yeah.
don't know what's happening. Um, I don't like in the beginning when okay, I've been curious about what your opinion or your thoughts are on Kat and Thomas's relationship because it's very confusing to me. There's
Okay.
this clear chemistry, right? These two
Mm-hmm.
actors have chemistry. I can't tell if they're doing it on purpose and they're going to give us more of the background at some point because you feel like they should have by now. But when she says in the cold open that she will never forgive Thomas for him
Mm-hmm.
like convincing Jacob to smuggle for him. What? What? Like he's a thief. Like what? This makes no sense. And then when Thomas asks Kat, like, do you really think that little of me? When she was like, did you, because I told you that I'm confused about the trust between them. Does that make sense? Like, I don't understand the relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I didn't take it like that. I took it as something that I would say to somebody, like, I'll never forgive you. Like, I think she was just saying that. I actually really like this, and I am rooting for this relationship because I'm over her relationship with Elliot. Like, one,
Yeah.
if somebody is that hot and cold for so long, despite your history, like, I don't think Elliot is proving to be a healthy partner, or I don't know. So like I'm kind of over the Cat and Elliot love story.
Yeah, you're hashtag Tomcat.
So
But
I'm into this.
I know you want it to happen, but I don't
Mhm.
up until this point, do you feel like there's even we feel the chemistry, but
I feel like
we're
we
not
don't know anything about Thomas Coyle yet. I think we're learning based on some assumptions, but like I think there's gonna there's a reason for everything that we have yet to discover. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that he was like some secret spy trying to actually bring down Cyrus, like an undercover cop in the 1800s. And like all of this stuff is leading up to something. I don't know. I just feel like there has to be something. Like I just don't feel like I know enough about Thomas Coyle, and like a thief. I don't know. Is he really a thief? I don't know.
I just feel like this chemistry is confusing because there's not enough that they're giving us of why there even is that chemistry or even the relationship that he has with Susanna, why Kat even trusts him to help her. Like, and she says she doesn't trust him, but it's all very
Mm.
confusing. But there's like a lot of little things in this episode. Like, Kat is frantically looking for the execution records, but she doesn't look where Casey left it the last, like it was at the desk where Casey left it. And she's like frantically looking at
Yeah.
all of their places. I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess if you're like anxious and you're not thinking straight.
Yeah.
When the phone rang, when Dell was with Sam Bishop, like he was picking up the horse and then decided he was going to leave Stormy. Dell was really far from the house when the phone rang. Like,
I did
I
think
feel like
about
by the
that.
time she got to the phone,
Yes.
the person wouldn't be on the other
That's what
side.
sparked my questioning of like, why do they still have a home phone? Because she had to go so far, and how did she even hear it? It
Right?
was so loud out there.
And she still calls the horse Stormy. Like, what was this horse's actual name? I'm
Oh yeah.
confused. That was the longest glass of wine. Like they started drinking, like she invited him in when it was sunny out. By the time he left, it was really dark, but you don't know what happened. Like there wasn't
Yeah.
enough of the conversation that like gave you the impression of like he was there for a long time. Like
Mm.
I don't know, it was just really bizarre. Even the Cyrus Goodwin character and his acting was like it
Yeah.
was really hard for me to take it seriously. My
Yeah.
son was like, when he woke up from the Jimson weed sleep, like, why does he sound like the Hulk? It's like, it just was a weird, I don't know. It was
Yeah.
weird. And then when they were when Thomas was with the, men that were pretending to be soldiers, Cyrus's minions, and he was putting the candles in the window for Kat,
Mm-hmm.
all the other curtains were down. How did he know that that one curtain would be up just enough for him to put candles? And why would you put candles under a curtain that's still lowered? Like, I just couldn't. And why is Kat yelling so much when you're like, you're in tunnels and it's echoing? People are chasing you. And why are
Yeah.
you yelling so loud? And why are you so slow?
I know. Yeah, that was,
really...
and also none of well, I guess the jail doors did have a lock on it, but that was also confusing. I don't know. The whole like tunnel jail system, I was like, eh. The, okay. One thing and I understand, but I don't know if this is what they're alluding to. When
Okay.
Kat decides when they come up with this plan with Susanna that they're gonna dress alike, and then she says, "Do you have a dress I can wear?" And she's like, "Well, they're not dresses," or something.
Yeah.
Okay, what are they alluding to? Is Susanna a woman of the night? Like, she came in a nightgown. I'm not like,
No, I think I had to go back and watch it like 3 times. Because first of all, I was like, why is there just like a wig? And like, I guess, do you think that store is a general store? Is that what, like, Susanna runs a general store?
yeah, I think it is, but they both show up in white nightgowns. Like, what does
Because
that
she's
mean?
asking, do you have 2 dresses that are similar? So she doesn't have 2 dresses that look similar. I feel like that's how I interpreted. Like, she only has 2 nightgowns that look similar, but not dresses. So that's what they ended up with because they needed to look the same in order
Okay.
to pull off, you know. And I'm guessing this is the origin of the White Witch story,
That's what I was
what they
thinking.
did, right? And so they needed to do that in order to pull off, like, when they're coming out of the Jimson weed stupor
Hmm.
hallucinations. I don't know. It just, a lot of these things just felt really weak. And like, why would the police call Dell with more evidence and call back and say, never mind? Like, you wouldn't do that to a woman. Like, the police
Mm,
wouldn't just be like, oh, we think we found more evidence. Oh, psych, never mind. We take it
mhm.
back. Like, that doesn't happen.
Right.
And kind of similar, the way we see it kind of starts off as a dead ends. Do you have more in dead ends or should we move on?
Um, okay, I have a question, and this is filled
So
with
many
questions for
questions.
me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they used the same scene as season 1, episode 1 of Kat getting to the pond and jumping in,
So many screenshots. Yeah.
and I don't like that. I'm like, why couldn't you
Same.
have just put the last scene? You already have it filmed. Like, cut it. You already have that file somewhere. Put it in. Like, if she's running through, like, or I don't know, it just felt like a continuity error. Like, at
Yeah.
least all the scenes of her running through, we didn't have that really the first, like, we did have some, but like, throw in that first scene we ever see to really bring it full circle, because that would have,
Yeah.
the fact that as soon as I saw her do it and I was like, this isn't the same, that kind of
Yeah.
ruined it a little bit
That
for me.
You are right. That's probably what took away some of the magic of, like, it needed to be the same. I think they did that because Thomas Coyle wasn't in it the first season.
But
So they
even
had
just that last moment where she said, because I feel like she delivered the line differently. Even that last minute when she's looking back and she says, "I'm coming back for you, Jake."
uh
Even just that, if put that in,
just
like,
use the same one.
exactly,
Yeah,
so that our brains connected, because
totally.
instead of being like, I was excited that it was the full circle moment, but at the same time I was like, oh, they didn't use the same scene. And I was disappointed.
Sigh.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's how I felt about the key, which is how we're going to kick off the way we see it, which for the way home is observations and theories, because our observations, the way we see it, changes our theories. And typically for Hallmark movies, we call this a jiao painting happily ever after, like who we're rooting for, what we want to see happen after. I'm going to add a little bit of that in there here today. But all about the key.
Yeah.
I don't like the way, I felt like it was really weak, the way that Kat remembered the key. Like she's standing in the room and the Polaroids are on the desk, like strewn about the desk. And she's not really like, she's just sad. She's exhausted, but she knows she's running out of time. She's got to figure out a way to get Jacob. And she finds a picture of a key and a Polaroid and then remembers that Jacob has boxes, and like how quickly she finds everything to me was like, it wasn't the way home enough for me. Like, what are we doing? We're losing our magic. And so this is my question. Do you think that the key that Kat dropped was on that ground by the pond for hundreds of years? Or did the key show up magically at the same time for Jacob, 8-year-old Jacob in the 90s? Like the moment she dropped it, it showed up in the 90s and he was there the way that they showed it. Or was it there for hundreds of years?
I
Because
mean, neither
literally,
one really feel. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
literally.
go ahead.
No, I was like, neither one of those are like, that's so crazy. Cause like, how would a key that was like landed on top just sit in the same spot for hundreds of years? But then
Right?
also like it magically appeared. I don't know.
Is there still pond water on like that? It's muddy from pond water, so the key time traveled. Like, what?
I know.
What? I listen, people, the way home, all of y'all. You better make sense of that in episode 7. I
That's
don't
funny.
even know how much to express. Um, even the way that the White Witch, the way that they pulled that together. See, again, this is like more of dead ends. I didn't get it all. It was like the way that they even the way that Kat was like, okay, this is our strategy of how we're gonna go get Jacob. It felt very cheesy.
Yeah.
I was confused. Were you confused about how that thought process even came about? Like when they were strategizing, and Thomas is like, the reason why she needed to put on the costume or the wig is because they shouldn't see a stranger. Like if Goodwin's men see a stranger, they're gonna shoot on sight. But how does the wig and a nightgown not make her a stranger?
I think I don't know. I think they're basically like, well, if they see you, they'll just think you're Susanna.
Oh, so that wig is supposed to make her look like Susanna?
Yeah, because
But
that's why
then,
Susanna had the long curly hair, where we've always seen Susanna's hair up.
so then we need a wig that is curly.
Which,
The wig
if you
straight.
saw, it was kind of curly at the beginning.
Oh, and then it
I
got
think
not.
they're just trying to like be like, oh, people will think you're Susanna. That's why they're dressed like twins.
But it needs to be enough of a difference. It just was like, so, but if this was the origin of the White Witch story, see, that's where I'm confused. It's like there must be another White Witch story for them to be like, oh, this is a witch. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? Where it's like, I don't know. I don't like it. It just feels messy. It's sloppy. It's not clean.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that call that Del got from the psychic about Jacob in the water?
So
Do you have any
that
thoughts
is
on what that could be?
something. So that made me think of the White Witch.
Yes,
But
but
I don't know how to tie that together.
what if it's Alice or Kat calling from the future?
That's what I was wondering, but part of me is like, would they do that to their mom? I don't know. I'm like, is that a red herring that they're trying to like
Yeah.
get us to tie a theory to. I don't know, but it did make me think about that.
I thought I had a lot more here. I
Well,
think
yeah.
this left me uninspired. But go ahead. You do
Yes,
yours.
this was not as uninspiring. I only had one, and my only it's more like what I think. I definitely think there's going to be a relationship between Thomas Coyle and Kat. And I
Yeah.
think in the next episode, I either in so episode 7 or episode 8. Wait, is it going all the way to 10 or 9?
10.
So we have
Oh,
4
I
more.
said we have 4 more episodes.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think in the
Can't
next 2
count.
episodes is when we're going to see Thomas paint Kat.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's going to be some type of love or exploration of love that happens. But other than that, like I felt uninspired. I actually don't know what's gonna happen. Do we think that we're gonna see the party at the Goodwin mansion happen next episode?
I've like lost hope because I thought
Right?
it was gonna be there's more likely now. I thought it was gonna be in 5 or 6. I'm like, why are you dragging it? I feel like it's such a key. Like I'm really hoping that it's not like the Colton storyline where it's like it's the cliffhanger of the last episode. I think I like where you see part of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think you're right because if you look at previews and you look at the log line, it's already out of the next episode. It talks about how Elliot is concerned that like Kat's heart is in the 1800s. So
Yeah.
I think you're right there. And in the preview or the sneak peek episode, which is always in the show notes, um, it's the sneak peek is of Thomas and Kat in the cove, just the two of them at a fireplace. Like it's not romantic by any means. They say the scene opens up where they're calling a truce, which I'm like, I just don't get their relationship at all. And I'm really hoping that the next episode gives us more about that. Um, like at this point, I've given up hope on Linger more that I'm like, you better explain Thomas and Kat better and give us more on that. But yeah, what are your hopes for how they wrap things up?
Well, I obviously want some like I think in the hopiest of hopes that I have
Yes.
is that
Yes.
Jacob would get to see Dell or Dell would get to see Jacob. I think I'm
Yeah.
okay with how everything else unfolds, but there is this like longing for Dell to have comfort. Whether
Yeah.
Jacob stays in the 1800s or not,
Yeah.
I want her to have that moment with him.
Yeah. I think we will. In the preview of next week is Dell telling Kat like you're hiding something and I want you to tell me everything.
Well, I hope she does, and I hope they find this out. I I hope like at the end of the day, I don't know how I feel about Kat and Elliot. I don't know how I feel about Alice and Elliot. Like I don't know, like Brady, I don't really care about. I think for
Oh
me,
gosh, forgot about him.
all I want to see is that Kat and Dell get to talk with Jacob and that he like understands they love him. They've never stopped looking for him, all that stuff.
Do you think this season is going to end with each of the Landry women with a love interest?
Oh,
And
interesting.
like
Probably.
so in the previews, Noah LeBlanc is helping Alice like search for what happened at the Lingermore estate. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I bet they will.
You guys, I'm surprised at how much we bring up. I shouldn't be surprised at this point, but with Hallmark movies and obviously with The Way Home, there's going to be a lot more of how much we bring up the topics of grief
Mm.
and covert abusive behavior, specifically with narcissistic personality disorder. And I don't want this is a podcast. This isn't like me in a professional sense. Like, I actually do not like the pathologizing of the personality disorders. And I'm going to link it in the show notes. If you are someone who is recovering from that type of abuse, um, There's a nervous system regulation program, and there's also a narcissistic trauma recovery program. And if you're interested and you're someone who's like, I want to help people from that, I'll link in the show notes the best coaching certification program. It's positive psychology, trauma informed with IFS, polyvagal theory. It's my favorite. I'll talk more about that on a different episode, but I just want to drop it in there. So if you're in grief recovery, we have resources in the show notes, as well as trauma and abuse recovery. So, but I feel like a lot of the love interests that we're seeing, whether it's Sam Bishop,
Right.
whether it's Noah LeBlanc, especially Thomas Coyle. I know you want them together, but I'm like, stop. Like, it's painful for me. Like, why do you keep going after the bad guys? Kat?
Is he bad? We don't know.
That's the crazy making cycle. That's like you doubt your reality, you doubt your perceptions. Literally decreases the size of your hippocampus and causes physical symptoms of CPTSD. Anyways, I think we need to end it here. I'm sorry at how disappointing our review is. But I have so much faith in you guys, all of you. I love the cast. I love the writers. I love the showrunner.
So do better next week.
Yeah. That's all we got.
Okay, well, thank you for breaking script with us. Please share this episode on your socials and tag at the Breaking Script Podcast. Follow and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you haven't yet, please rate and review an Apple Podcast so we can spread more Hallmark glimmers around the world. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Bye. Bye, team.
Bye.
All right, love you.
Okay, well, thanks for breaking script with us. Please share this episode on your socials and tag at the Breaking Script Podcast. Follow and hit the notification bell button so you never miss an episode. And if you haven't yet, please rate and review an Apple Podcast so we can spread more Hallmark glimmers to the world. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Ciao.